Greetings and welcome to the University of Minnesota Alumni Association's webinar series. My name is John Ruzek and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks and your host today. Thanks for taking time to join us live. Today we have an expert from the University of Minnesota Extension who will be sharing with us the best ways to eat healthy, save time and money when it comes to the foods we eat and what we buy at grocery stores. Today's webinar is part of an ongoing free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. And just this past fall alone, we've had over 1,000 day of attendees and over 1,200 YouTube views. And so thanks for everyone who's joining us and finding us online. Initiatives like these are made possible in part by our Alumni Association members. And so thank you very much. Because of our membership, we can create powerful opportunities for students and our nearly 500,000 alumni around the world. And if you're interested in learning more, just visit us at umnalumni.org/membership. Upcoming webinars, we have this is kicking off a great lineup here in February. On February 16th, we have one on professional presence with Maggie Thomas of the Carlson School's Graduate Business Career Center. February 23rd, Managing Life Transitions with best-selling author Richard Leider. And on February 28th, Addiction 101, Myths and Misconceptions with Amy Krentzman, who's a professor with the School of Social Work. Since you are visiting us online, there's also a couple other virtual opportunities. Next week on Wednesday, on February 8th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. We're asking all alumni and friends who'd like to share career advice with students to join us during our virtual networking event. It's like speed networking, only online. You can find registration info at umnalumni.org/virtual. And also on the 15th, if you're on the Twitter, we have on February 15th our UMN career chat during the noon hour. So just follow us at the hashtag UMN career chat on Twitter and join in the conversation about navigating a career fair. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items with GoToWebinar. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel and dial-in information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this could be caused by having multiple software packages open or perhaps logging in via wireless. So close any systems you don't need and also move to a hardwired connection if you are on wireless and experiencing audio problems. Questions are welcome and you can submit them. There'll be a couple times during the presentation today where our presenter will be asking for your feedback. So feel free to share. We do want to hear from you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Sharon Powell, who's an educator with the University of Minnesota Extension Center for Family Development. She serves the entire state of Minnesota from her home office in Minneapolis. Sharon divides her time between programs for individuals and families that build financial skills and that build parenting and relational skills. Her work addresses needs at the individual, community, and policy levels through research, education, and outreach. And before joining Extension, Sharon was a lecturer in the Department of Family Social Science at the University of Minnesota. And she's earned a master's degree in human development counseling from Vanderbilt University and a PhD in family social science from the University of Minnesota. And it's, again, my great pleasure to welcome Sharon.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here today, John. I'm really looking forward to this. I had a good time putting this presentation together, and I hope we will all have a good time today talking about all of this. Forward there. I'm sorry, I sent John my picture and my biography a little while back, so I forgot I'd done that, so I put another picture of myself in here. So just to tell you a little bit more about myself from a more personal perspective, I live here in the Twin Cities. I'm a city dweller, as I mentioned. I've lived in Minneapolis for almost 20 years, and my office is based in North Minneapolis. I live in South Minneapolis, and I have two kids, 15 and 11. And I love food. So that's kind of the context in which my food world revolves. And so I think that's a good idea to let you know that before we continue. All right. So I wanted to start today by asking you a question that I hope you will pop into your chat box and answer for. And this has to do with the topic today, making healthy choices on a budget. So I just want to ask you to consider these questions. How do you feel about making some changes in the foods you eat? And what have you tried in the past when you decided you and or your family members needed to eat more healthy food? And regarding those changes, how did they work? Did it go okay? Was it not okay? Did some of them stick with you permanently? Or just tell me a little bit about food and nutrition and changes in your life.
And we'll take the next few seconds here to allow people an opportunity to type in any feedback on these questions in the questions panel. So feel free to type in. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. So looks like some positive responses. Folks are feeling excited about making changes, eager, constantly trying to make good food choices. I know that feeling. Oh, here's somebody with 10 and 14-year-olds. So you're in my boat. One's extremely picky and does not eat enough protein. Yep. Mm-hmm. Bringing changes to family diets is hard. I agree. And my 11-year-old is a huge Hot Cheetos and Takis fan. He's sure that it's their own food group, and has a constant tension in our house about how to deal with that. Oh, it's hard with boys and food allergies. Yep. Mm-hmm. Excited to make changes. Yeah, not a lot of time to spend in the kitchen when you're working full time. I hear you on that one. It is tough. It's hard to keep up long term. Different food preferences within families. Yep. Lots of carb lovers among the children out there. I know pasta, potatoes, all those things that kids love. 2 girls in high school. The other lives on white food. Isn't that, I'm not a native Minnesotan, but isn't that a joke about Minnesota food is all white? I get bored with the same meals, I know. I feel that way too. Buying more frequently. Fresh food helps me waste less. Yeah. Okay. So looks like I have an honors class that has showed up today. Lots of great feedback and wisdom already in the group. Well, I'm glad to hear that. All right. Well, let's go ahead. Thank you for your comments. It's always nice to hear. Okay. Some people think they cannot make changes in the foods they choose because healthy foods are expensive. And it's true, especially if you don't have time. If you don't have a lot of the resource of time, then you wind up needing to sometimes dig into other resources. And money is one of those resources that you tend to have to turn towards. So sometimes healthy food can be expensive. But hopefully with careful planning and shopping, we can avoid some of those dilemmas that we fall into where we are trying to create meals that will be eaten, but at the same time being mindful of budgeting. So if we're really honest with ourselves, we have to admit it's difficult to make changes in the foods we eat. I know it is for me. It's a lifelong kind of challenge, really, that I have to come back to time and again. If you've tried to lose weight, for example, you know that at first when you're on a diet, it's exciting because you see, it feels like you're making progress and the things that you're eating possibly are novel to you. So the newness makes it a little more interesting and exciting, but over time it's hard to maintain a new eating habits or activity habits because it requires discipline and willpower, and sometimes that just gets more than we can handle. So how do we deal with these issues? Well, we're going to start off by looking more in depth at healthy foods so that we can be sure that we know what they are. Another thing we want to do is accept the fact that whatever changes we make aren't going to be very big, and they're gonna happen over time in small incremental changes. It's really much easier to make a change if you bite off a little bit at a time to make the change, rather than trying to make very big, abrupt changes overnight. And then finally, I think that eating healthier food often involves being willing to try new foods and recipes, so being a little bit open to new experiences with food. Okay, so let's start with what is healthy food. I've put up two different measures for you to view that are different ways to kind of think about what a healthy diet contains. One, they both are centered around plates, as you can see. The one on the left is called myplate.gov. This is put out by the USDA and has replaced the food pyramid, if you were familiar with that measure too. But My Plate is just the current sort of symbol for thinking about nutrition that the government supports. On the right is another version of what healthy eating includes, and that is put out by the Harvard School of Public Health, and it's called the Healthy Eating Plate. So it's also a plate. And so I wanted to just take a moment to let you guys look at these two different measures or symbols and tell me what things you see are similar and what things you see are different. And you can, again, put that into your chat. Just, I guess, go ahead and chat the differences that you see.
And we'll give people a few seconds to type in responses. I think there's probably a lag on our end as far as when we start seeing, okay, here they come in.
Mm-hmm. Is milk good or bad? Good question. Yep, one has dairy, one does not. Mm-hmm. Healthy fats are okay. That's right. Harvard puts those in there, don't they? Yeah, no water on the My Plate. You guys are hitting them all. Like I said, you're the honors group. So yeah, you can see there's some real similarities between these groups. Between these different symbols. Definitely, they are essentially sort of, in terms of the 4 food groups that are on the plate, they're basically the same proportions, but in the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, they have put vegetables on top of fruits. They've flipped those. And I think they're doing that to prioritize that we need to have a lot of vegetables in our diet, really. And then a big one you guys hit on is that the myplate.gov stresses dairy as a food group, a healthy eating food group. And Harvard Healthy Eating Plate does not have dairy on there. I don't think they think dairy is unhealthy necessarily, but I think that they just don't think that you need dairy specifically, that you can get the nutritional benefit from dairy in other foods if you focus on those. Instead, they focus on water. It's really important to have water, and I agree. And then the other thing that I think is the main difference that I spotted was that in the Healthy Eating Plate, there's also a focus on healthy oils, and I think it's been out there for quite a while, the past few years at least, that fats, we need fats in our diet, that healthy fats are the best kind, and they provide certain nutritional benefit that we require. So no fat in our diet is not necessarily healthy. Way to go. All right, so we'll just start with each of these groups and talk a little bit about them. Vegetables. We all know that fruits and vegetables are healthy foods, but why are they healthy? Well, first of all, they're low in calories, so you get a lot of bulk for not many calories, so they can help fill your belly, basically, if you're hungry. They also have a lot of fiber that helps you feel full and keeps your digestive system healthy. Fruits and vegetables, different stuff that's contained inside fruits and vegetables, help you reduce your risk of many diseases, including heart disease, high blood pressure, and some types of cancers. And then finally, fruits and vegetables have lots of vitamins and minerals that may help you feel healthy and energized. It really helps a lot if you like fruits and vegetables. I do. I think they're delicious. So, that makes it a lot easier. But you can also find ones that there's so many out there. You can find ones that probably you like better than others. You can find your preferences. So we're supposed to eat several servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And typically most Americans don't eat enough. Now, you might think that fruits and vegetables, especially fresh, are too expensive, but there are ways you can afford inexpensive fruits and vegetables if you shop carefully. So the best way to do that is to try to buy fruits and vegetables on sale. If you buy them fresh, you can keep the cost down by buying in season. So this is where that kind of a willingness to try something new really comes in handy. So what is in season right now, for instance, may not be something you're very familiar with. So during the winter months, for instance, root vegetables are one of the few things that you can technically call being in season in terms of fresh fruits and vegetables. So I don't know about you guys. I did not grow up eating things like rutabagas, but they're a good thing. They're cheap at the market right now. And I know that seasonally this is a good time to buy them. So I made a commitment a couple of years ago to try to embrace rutabagas. And actually, I really like them now. I think it's easy. I don't have to make myself anymore. I think they're delicious. But it is something that requires some exploration on the consumer's part, I think. Other things that are in season right now are avocados. I just was looking before we started the webinar at Lunds and Byerly's ad for this week, and they have ripe avocados on sale, 5 avocados for $5, so $1 a piece. That's a really good deal on avocados. So that's a good thing to think about for this time of year. And citrus is also on sale right now, also at Lunds and Byerly's. I think they have, heirloom navel oranges, a 3-pound bag for $3.99. So I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to go out of the webinar for a second, take you to the first link of mine. This is a site from the USDA. It's called the Seasonal Produce Guide. And so it's pretty nice to see. You can just look and see according to season what is, basically in season right now. So there's avocado, as we already mentioned. Here's some citrus, grapefruit. Oranges are on there. There's my beloved rutabagas. So this is, I think, a pretty nice little link. And I think, let's see what happens if you click on it. Yeah, then you can just click on the actual fruit or vegetable listed, and it'll tell you a little bit more about it. So I have that link provided for you in a handout that you can download when we finish. Oh, thanks, John. All right. Let's see. You guys may notice or know this already, but the other advantage to buying fruits and vegetables when they're in season, or at least fresh fruits and vegetables, is they just taste so good. And certainly they're a lot cheaper at that time. So, for instance, my favorite time to buy strawberries is in June, when I like to go and pick them myself if I can. But they're so good. They taste almost like a different fruit to me sometimes than when I buy them in, say, December for a special occasion or something like that. And what's coming up really soon that I'm super duper looking forward to is asparagus. Those are an early spring in season vegetable, and that is going to be available pretty soon, and they're all of a sudden inexpensive and delicious. I know I've been sometimes, like at, let's say, my co-op, when I wanted to buy asparagus for a special occasion, and they were organic, of course, and so that made them more expensive too, but they were almost like $9 a pound. So then I opted for something else. So anyways, also buying frozen and canned fruits are an option this time of year. And it turns out that I think what we used to believe is that frozen or canned fruits always tasted inferior, had an inferior taste to fresh fruits and veggies. But actually, if you're buying something that isn't in season at that time, sometimes the frozen or canned fruits and vegetables can taste a lot better as well. I think tomatoes are the perfect example of that. When you buy tomatoes in season, they're delicious, and you can use them for all kinds of recipes. But if you try to buy a fresh tomato right now, odds are that it will not be very tasty at all, pretty bland. And so you'll actually get a lot more flavor out of a can of tomatoes at this time of year. Okay, we're going to touch on dairy products. Somebody asked the question in the chat, is milk good for you or not? And there's all kinds of controversy out there about every food that we can consume. So I would say in general, what we know about dairy products is they're a form of protein, things like milk, cheese, and yogurt, and they also are high in calcium. And so they can be good for you. But for some people for whom dairy, they're allergic to dairy, let's say, that is, obviously this isn't going to be an option for them. And there are many cultures around the world for whom dairy just plays a really minimal role, and they're perfectly healthy. So I really think it's more of a question of preference than it is necessity for you. Do fruits and veggies have less nutritive value when they are out of season? That's a good question. I don't know for certain about that. I think, as something becomes riper, it gets more sugar in it typically. That's why it tastes better. So I don't know about the other nutrients that are in it though. So that's a really good question. I can look that up. And if you want to know, Carla, you can email me and I'll email you back the answer. Butter is not a carb. Butter is protein. That was a question. Is butter a carbohydrate? Nope, it's a fat actually. And it's also, from an animal, so that puts it in the protein category as well. Is yogurt better than milk? I would say that's a question of preference probably. Certainly there are nutritional profiles between yogurt and milk that make them different, and for some people I think yogurt works better than milk, but it depends upon the amount of processing that goes into either of them, and then what type of yogurt you're using, like plain yogurt, or are you using a flavored yogurt, or is your milk whole or 1% or skim? And so there's a lot of things to put into that to know whether one would be better for anyone than another. And then certainly it depends upon the individual as to whether yogurt is better for you than milk. It kind of just depends upon what you like better and how much you're able to digest the different parts of the yogurt and the milk. Somebody said, I'm saying wait, but you guys don't know. How do I make it go back down?
Sure.
Scroll up a little bit.
Sure.
Just caught another question about how do you keep parsley and cilantro fresh so they're aromatic and worth even putting in food? That's a really good question. So what I would say is this is a great example of, I know at my co-op, for instance, now I don't think you could do this at a large grocery store, but at my co-op, you don't, even though something comes in a bunch, like let's say a bunch of cilantro, you don't have to buy the entire bunch. You can pull out just a little bit that you think you might actually need for your recipe and buy only that portion, just like you would any other bulk food. And you could do that with parsley as well. But if you want to buy, or if you get a whole big bunch of it and you need to use it, what I've read is that a good thing to do with fresh herbs in general is when you get them home, go ahead and put them in a glass of cold water and store them in your fridge in the water, just like you would fresh flowers or something like that. And they'll stay fresh longer. Another trick that I know of is that you can use your food processor and take whatever the herb is, let's say the cilantro, and mix it in your food processor with just a very small amount of water till you have kind of a paste in there. And then you can freeze that and then store it in, once it's frozen, like I'd freeze it in ice cube trays. And then once it's frozen, pop it out and put it in a bag and label it as, cilantro or something like that. And then you can throw the whole frozen cube into things you're cooking and use it that way. How do you get good calcium without dairy? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. There are other sources of calcium that depend upon the single type of food. So something like there's some nuts that have a lot of good calcium in there. Certainly things like certainly there's bones like fish bones sometimes that I think some of the calcium mixes in with canned fish, so then you can get pretty good calcium that way. But we can look as we go along and get that answered more clearly. I think I got most of those ones answered. Let's see. Let's go forward here. All right. Protein is another food group, and you can see I tried to, it's not super clear, but I tried to provide a lot of examples of protein besides just meat, because that's what I think people tend to think of first is meat, poultry, and seafood. But certainly beans and peas also are protein, great sources of protein. Eggs are. Processed soy products, and that includes tofu and tempeh and what's the one I'm leaving out? Well, tofu and tempeh are the two major ones, and then there is seitan, which actually that is not, or maybe that is soy. Anyway, seitan is another good source of protein. That's a vegetarian source of protein, and most of us manage to get enough protein, and it's important that we do because the nutrients involved in protein really help us stay healthy and help us stay satiated so we're not feeling hungry all the time. And they also contribute to just growth, cell growth. Let's see, several ways that you can include meat in your meals without spending too much, because if you're someone who does eat meat, sorry, I'm laughing because I'm seeing a question here from Thomas. Do you watch Top Chef? How does one cook like that? I don't watch Top Chef, so I can't tell you. I think you're going to need more than a 1-hour webinar to get to be Top Chef level is my guess, though. Okay, so back to proteins. Like meat proteins are probably the most expensive portion of a person's grocery bill. So how do you make that protein stretch a little bit farther? And one way you can do that is by mixing your meat proteins with other proteins. So you can put beans in there, or perhaps have meat and tofu mixed together. And you can wind up with some really tasty dishes. Let me see what else. In addition to mixing proteins with other types of proteins, you can also mix protein in with your fruits, not your fruits probably, but with your veggies. Some fruits, I guess, but so that you can work more and more of those veggies and fruits into your diet as you make your changes. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say about that. Beans in general are a great source of protein. Just put a little shout out for beans. They're high in fiber and they're inexpensive. So in terms of a time saver, what I like to do when I prepare beans is I make a really big batch, and then once they're cooked, you can freeze them, and they work really well even when you thaw them out. So you can make one big batch on the weekend, let's say, and then eat some of them, but you can put the rest of them up to use at a later time. See, eggs also are another inexpensive form of protein, and I think delicious. Some people don't love eggs. Some people think they're pretty good. But I think there's some other ways you can enjoy eggs besides just scrambled, let's say, that make them a reasonable idea to serve at lunch and dinner as well as breakfast. So I've thrown in a recipe in a little bit that I think is a pretty enticing looking way of using an egg. And lovely asparagus will make another appearance at that as well. So let's see, what kind of beans are most nutritious? Caitlin, that's a good question. I can't say right off the top of my head, but I have some websites on here for you that I can point you to that can tell you a lot more about the individual protein nutrient profiles of each of the different bean types. Oh, don't most Americans eat way more protein than they need? Well, that could be the case, Anita. I'm not an expert on that, but yeah, we certainly have access to a lot of cheap protein here in the United States, and we do probably go overboard. I'd say going overboard is a hallmark of American culture in general. So almost any category you want to think about, we would probably fall into that category. All right. Cannellini beans, Derek says, are a good source of nutrition. All right, well, that's good to know. Okay, let's talk a minute about grains. So these are also a part of our list of healthy foods. And grains can be a lot of different things, but basically foods made from wheat, rice, oats, cornmeal, and barley are all grain products. So some of those I bet you're more familiar with than others. Wheat and corn are probably the two most common. grains that we see out there. But bread, pasta, oatmeal, breakfast cereals, tortillas, grits, corn chips, popcorn, those are all examples of grain foods. So what I want to know about you guys, because the recommendation from nutrition people is that you make half of the grains that you eat whole grains. So I'm wondering if you guys, does anybody want to tackle the question of what is your definition of a whole grain? Can you chat that in there for me and let's see what we get? Yeah, Diane's asking a question about wheat and wheat gluten in particular. There are a lot of people that are developing allergies to wheat gluten. Way to go, Mary. Mary eats 100% whole wheat bread. Nice work. Grain that is whole seed. Yeah, that's a good definition. I like that. Brown rice instead of white at Chipotle. Mm-hmm. Yep. Brown rice is a whole grain. Hopefully, as if it's made, if they're true to their statement. Uh-oh. Miranda says, I have no idea. I just go off what the label says. If it says whole wheat bread, I assume it's whole wheat. That's not a bad method, Miranda. You need to be able to see a large part of the grain, not blended ground up. Whole grain contains the whole kernel. All right. Well, you guys, these are great examples. So I'm gonna give you a picture of a grain of tell you what the definition, the official definition is. Whole grains contain the entire grain kernel, just like I think it was Anita that said that. The bran, the germ, and the endosperm. So you can see that in the picture I've provided for you. The bran is this outer part of the skin, the multi-layered outer skin of the edible kernel. Contains antioxidants, B vitamins, and fiber. And usually in a refined grain, that bran has been husked away. It's chewy and a lot of it is inedible, and so people tend to prefer a refined grain that doesn't have that texture and chewiness and they prefer a lower amount of fiber, really, but it's quite good for you. So that the bran is on there, and then the germ is that little bitty yellow part in the middle, and that is the embryo, which has the potential to sprout into a new plant. So that has B vitamins, protein, minerals, and healthy fats. So if you're going to get any protein from something that's a grain, it's going to be contained there in the germ. So you want to be sure to keep that in your, it's good to keep that in your grain. And then finally, there's the endosperm, which is that light colored part in the middle, and that's by far the largest part of the grain kernel. And that is essentially the food source for the germ. So the germ's the little tiny baby plant that if it were to stay in the ground and not be chewed up by us, it would possibly turn into a plant someday. And the endosperm is the kind of the nurse cell that feeds that thing. So all of the healthy nutrients for the plant are in the endosperm. So that is contained with starchy carbohydrates and some proteins, and it's by far the largest portion of the kernel. So all grains start life as whole grains. In their natural state, growing in the fields, whole grains are the entire seed of a plant. Seeds are also called kernels by whole grains people. And the seed is made up of these three edible parts. Okay, so that's what a whole grain looks like on the plant. I want to tell you guys about a group called the Whole Grains Council, and I have them listed in this handout as a link you can go to, but they do a lot more discussion about whole grains, and they've actually developed a seal of approval called the Whole Grain Seal, and it's being adopted by pretty many food producers at this point. And so if you see that seal on a grain that you're buying in whatever form, that means it's for sure 100% whole grains. I just last night made some whole wheat pasta by the company Berea, and it had the whole grain seal on there. So one way you can know that something is whole wheat is by that seal. Another way you can look is to look on the nutritional information, and if it says it's 100% whole wheat, then you know it is. There's a lot of ways they will throw you off sometimes when it comes to whole grains, because food companies know that we we want everything to be whole grain, and so they try to think of sneaky ways to put their stuff out there that makes it seem like it's whole grain, but it's not actually. So they'll sometimes say things like, I don't know, whole grain, 100% whole grain, maybe instead of 100% whole wheat, or if they just call something just wheat but not whole wheat, you can assume basically it's not 100% whole wheat then. Let's see. I bake a lot and always add wheat germ and flaxseed to whatever I'm making. That's great. I often add an extra egg. Yeah, building up the protein a little bit. I do agree, Carla. And if you like it that way, that's awesome. Then usually that kind of thing helps with the satiety. That's just the noun form of satiated, so that you eat a smaller amount, but it keeps you from feeling hungry for longer. So that's a very creative way to deal with that. What grain should be incorporated in your diet the most? Wow, Caitlin, I don't know. It kind of depends upon preference. I would say, just personally, I try to create a diversity of grains in my life because each of them will have a little bit something different to offer. We have so much access to corn through corn syrup and other things that the major corn industry provides for us, that I would say we get plenty of corn. And so I would not work that hard to put even more corn into my life, I guess. And wheat also, there's so much wheat out there already. So if you can look for the lesser known grains, sometimes that can provide a little bit of diversity that we have a harder time eating nowadays. You have to seek that out a little bit more. Is it true you should stay away from grains altogether if you are trying to lose weight? I wouldn't say that's true. I mean, particularly whole grains, again, tend to contribute to things like satiety, and also there's higher protein levels in whole grains. And then they also have more fiber, so you actually digest less of what you ingest. So you take it into your body, but your body can't use it, so it just processes it on out of your body without contributing to your caloric load. So what that does is it provides what they call roughage, which helps with your digestion. And then it also helps you feel fuller, but without actually giving you more calories. So I think there's some grains that are pretty great. Also, you can eat grains combined sometimes with some proteins to create a complete protein, like brown rice and beans together create what they call a complete protein. So I don't think you should stay away from all of them necessarily to lose weight. And then you also want to consider how much calories you're taking in and how many you're burning during the day. So there's a lot more than just what you take in, probably, I would say, to consider in order to lose weight. I'm sorry I don't have any hard and fast answers for you guys. A lot of it is, my answer is sort of, well, it depends upon this or that, which is so annoying, I know, from a presenter. But that's just problem with the complexity of nutrition. It's a really dependent topic. All right, let's go on to the next slide. What time is it?
22.
Okay, great. All right, so let's just quick play this. I made a little game up for us in here I call it the Choosing Healthy Foods game. So I'm going to show you a picture of something that would be not necessarily the healthiest choice for something to eat or drink, and then I want you guys to chat in the box for me a suggestion to replace whatever it is that I have on the screen that would be a healthier option. Because I really don't want to come off seeming like some sort of food Nazi. I mean, there are a lot of things in our life that aren't nutritionally the best for us, but provide us a lot of pleasure anyways. And I think there's always room for some of that in our lives. But sometimes it's worth our while to see how we can take something that provides pleasure for us in one way and keep the pleasure that it provides, but find a healthier alternative. So if that makes sense, let's start with the first picture. This is supposed to be sugar soda, not diet soda, just plain old like Coke or something like that. Can you guys chat in the box for me some things you think? Oh, look, you guys are ready to go. Water, carbonated water flavored with fruit, unsweetened tea. Yes, good work, everybody. Ooh, Italian soda, that sounds good. Kombucha, yeah. Some people love it, some people hate it. I love kombucha. I think it's so good. Okay. Yes, good work, everyone. So, and the point is, you know, there's not one right answer, but if you're someone for whom you love carbonated stuff and, ooh, coconut water, that sounds good too. You know, maybe just take some time to think, how else can I get that same pleasurable feeling, but avoid the calories that come with that? Oh, what's kombucha? It's a fermented drink that, it's made out of vinegar, I think, that's then fermented. And I'm not making it sound too good, I'll tell you that much. But if you go to the co-op, let's say, your local co-op and ask them for kombucha, they can show you all about it. And there's different brands, and they have different flavor profiles. But I find it pretty refreshing. Let's see, who else said kombucha up there? Maybe Kirsten, did I do okay describing kombucha? You can type in more about it if you'd like. In the meantime, I will go to our next picture. All right, pretzels, you guys. What do you think might be an alternative to pretzels? Peanuts, yeah. Got a lot of good protein in there and all the healthy fats that come with nuts. Yeah, nuts, celery, that's a good one. Because if you like that crunch of pretzels, something like celery would be really good. Popcorn, fiber, yep. Nice and salty, just like pretzels are. Okay, here goes Kirsten, you guys. She says kombucha is fermented tea full of probiotics and only a little bit of sugar. There you go. That's an excellent definition of kombucha. All right, nice work, everybody, on the pretzel substitutions. Okay, and finally, oh, chocolate-covered pretzels. Bill.
Yum.
All right, ground beef. Yeah, turkey. You could use something like ground turkey. You could look for just a lower fat version of ground beef. Ground chicken. Yep. Great. Ooh, lentils. Good idea. Yep. All right. Nice work, everyone. I like the way you're thinking. All right, now it's time for our first healthy food challenge. And this is a poll that John has set up for me. So I want you to take a look at your options here and choose something that you would like to do in the next week that will kind of set a goal for yourself and challenge you a little bit.
So we'll give folks about 10 seconds here to select their choices, and then we'll reveal the results. Right.
Oh, is that where it
There you
come
go.
up?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is the results.
All right, look at that. Good work, you guys. That looks great.
So we have 48%, I think people can see this, 48% will buy fruits and vegetables on sale. And second is folks will try a whole grain that they've never tasted before.
Someone asked in there about quinoa, if quinoa was good for you, and it is good for you. And it's actually got a lot of protein in it as well. And I think it's quite yummy. I mean, I don't think I never sit down and eat just a bowl of only quinoa, but it's great for mixing into salads. And also you can use it with, you know, kind of in place of rice, let's say, with something or something like that. All right, you guys, nice work on the nutrition portion of this little class. Now I'm going to ask you a question about fruits and vegetables again, in particular. Is it challenging for you to incorporate fruits and vegetables into your diet? And if yes, what are some things that make it challenging? Yeah, time chopping the fresh vegetables. Oh, Carla throws a handful of quinoa into soups. That's a great idea. I like quinoa too because it's kind of chewy, so that would be good in a soup. It would provide some nice texture. Carla says she loves fruit. They have standard veggies, but would love to add more. Prep time. I hear you, B. Brown. That's tricky with this stuff. Oh, yeah, how to make them palatable. They go bad quickly. Yep. You guys are hitting on all the tough issues. Oh, finding recipes. Hard to make sides after making a main dish. Yeah, like you're just out of time or out of energy. can be a problem unless the main dish has a lot of veggies. Yeah. So the next time I'm teaching a class for the Alumni Association, I'm talking about just kind of more budgeting in general. And part of what I'll talk about then is determining needs versus wants. And I think I weighed the decision about whether to include that in this presentation as well, because so many of the things you're pointing out, I think, first of all, depend upon your own individual needs and your own, what you consider to be a want. But also, we have kind of these expectations that are placed upon us culturally that I think that we sort of feel like as, members of American society or something, here's what a good meal looks like. Like we need to, someone mentioned time to make sides in addition to a main dish or something like that. And I really feel like after I've worked all day long and come home, the chances of me cooking an entire main dish and sides is not, it's a 0% chance of that happening. So I feel like for myself, I have two choices. I can either feel bad about the fact that I didn't prepare a dish or a meal that had all of those components, or I could just say, at least we're getting something to eat here and it's pretty good. And none of us are going to starve or die of malnutrition because we didn't have, this sort of standard setting of that. So part of what I'd say is just, I think it's a good idea for all of us to focus on our expectations for ourselves and what's really a realistic expectation when it comes to things like nutrition and preparing foods and that kind of things. Only eats pop and Lunchables, Thomas's roommate. She doesn't know how to turn on the oven or the stove. Is there anything I can do to push her in a better nutritional direction, or is it a lost cause? Well, it depends on her motivation, I would say, Thomas. Like, does she want to change? If she wants to change and she's enthusiastic about learning some things, there's a lot of things you could do. But if she just feels like she's happy with herself the way she is, I'm afraid that's, she's in charge of her decisions and her body, unfortunately. Oh, Gargi has a great idea. When you're thinking about side dishes, just use something like using fresh carrots, cucumbers, etc. That's a really good idea because that really counts, and you just have to pull them out of the fridge. I do that a lot for myself. Lauren says we're rural and only shop twice a month so the second week is always no fresh veggies. Yeah, you're a great candidate for things like frozen. Do you have a garden, Lauren? Like that you harvest a lot of vegetables and then put them up, like maybe freeze them or can them? Because frozen vegetables certainly would be a great option for you for that second week. You do freeze a ton of veggies. That's awesome. That's a budget friendly and nutrition friendly. All right. So what I want to do, I've used canned fruits so that I can easily add to dishes. Good idea, Andy. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit later about buying fruit in their simplest form. So I feel like particularly for canned fruits, that's one to really pay close attention to because they can be pretty healthy for you as well, as long as you don't get the kinds that are packed in syrup, let's say, or something like that. And they taste good. I have some nutrition coworkers that will use canned fruits in smoothies, and I'd never thought of that till I saw them doing that. So you can use them in creative ways as well. All right, guys. So let's return to these nutrition plates and the healthy eating plates. Half of these plates, again, are filled with fruits and vegetables, so it's really worth our time to consider how can we build these things into our diet. So again, my nutrition coworkers showed me a trick. Sometimes they make smoothies in the classes that they teach, and they throw some fresh spinach into a smoothie. Now, I happen to love spinach, so I don't have any trouble building that in when it's like in its own form. But if you're someone for whom things like spinach aren't too appealing, you can throw it into something like a smoothie, and it essentially disguises the spinach. You don't taste it at all, but you still get the benefit, the nutritional benefit of it being in there. So there's ways you can be creative about throwing some of that stuff in. And fruits and vegetables really are healthy for us. So we want to try to figure out how we can build them in. So let's look at some tips for getting the most from your budget when shopping for fruits and veggies. So overall, the two main tips are plan before you shop and shop smart. Then we're going to talk about these in a little more detail. Looking at planning before you shop. Let's look for sales, specials, and coupons. Looking for fresh veggies in season. Considering canned or frozen trying store brands, considering picking your own, and looking into community-supported agriculture. So let me show you some of these things as we are going along. I think I already showed you the in-season calendar, so I won't go to that again, but that's a good thing to consider. And then when you're considering canned or frozen, as we said, we've already talked about that a little bit. Trying store brands is a good idea. I don't know if you guys are open to that or not. Some people think they're gross. Other people like them okay. But in some ways, again, I picked these things up from classes I've been part of with youth, especially. But we'll do sometimes taste tests for different kinds of grocery items, and we'll do blind taste tests, so you can have like a store brand, a name brand, and one other thing. And it's kind of a fun thing to do. It might be a fun event to do with a kid in your family if you have children, and then decide which one you like. And I will tell you guys, one time we were trying applesauce, and I liked the store brand, the Target brand of applesauce the best, and I was really surprised because I didn't think that I would, but I thought it was quite good. So it's kind of a fun thing to try, and a lot of times, particularly if it's not the main attraction in the dish you're making, you can use a store brand, and the flavor difference is so minimal that it won't matter. So it's good to think about that as well. Also consider picking your own. I don't know about you guys, but in the summertime up here, I love to go to orchards and pick fruit whenever it is in season. So like I said, in June, I like to go for strawberries. In July, it's time for blueberries, and I think raspberries are also in July. And then in August, you can start turning towards apples or so it's really fun. And all the way through the fall, of course, there are other things that will be coming into season. But to help you out, I'm going to give you this little link here to this Minnesota Grown website. And again, I have this on the handout for you. But this Minnesota Grown website has all kinds of great stuff, including a listing of Minnesota winter farmers markets, summer farmers markets. It has the Minnesota Grown directory, which you may have used in the past. And I didn't really think about the fact that some of you may not be here in Minnesota. So I'm really sorry if I'm excluding you right now. But you can, I'm sure, try just looking up CSAs, or community supported agriculture, in your state, and you'll find, I bet you, something similar. But this is a great resource for those of us who live in or very near Minnesota. What is it again?
Alt tab.
Alt tab. Okay, great. Thank you. And then also I have this suggestion to consider looking into community supported agriculture, or otherwise known as a CSA. So these are programs that farmers have, that they grow all the food, and then they support their work by people buying what's called a share in their harvest for that year. And if you have a share in a CSA, you get regular deliveries of the food that they are growing throughout the growing season. So, you can have a CSA of anything that a farmer might want to grow. So veggies CSA, a fruit CSA. I've seen dairy CSAs before. There's meat CSAs. So it kind of depends upon what you're interested in. And this is a great way to try new fruits and vegetables, because basically, if you sign up for, say, a vegetable CSA, then you just get whatever is is ripe that week in your box. So when I did the CSA, that's the first time I really tried cooking with beets. And even though I'd never tried a beet before that time, I did always think I didn't like them. I don't know why, since I hadn't tried them. But now I love beets. I think they're really delicious. But I don't like sweet things. I don't have much of a sweet tooth. So I think that's why I didn't like beets, because I'd seen them sweet before. So I have looked really, pretty extensively for savory beet recipes, and I really like them now. Also, there was another one. What was another good example? Oh, the name just escaped me. Certainly fennel is something that I had never really cooked with, and I used to get that every year in my CSA, so I had to figure out what to do with fennel. These are just examples of ways you can broaden your veggie out horizons by something like a CSA. Let's see what else. I think that's all I want to tell you about that. Okay, let's see. Kohlrabi. Thank you so much, Mary. You know what? That's the word I was trying to think of just a minute. Kohlrabi is always in CSAs too. Bananas are always in season and good cheap? Are they a good choice? I think bananas are a pretty good choice. You mean nutritionally speaking? They're certainly inexpensive. And part of that is because of the whole kind of agribusiness kind of model that's grown up around some of the fruits and vegetables that we eat. But there are fair trade bananas that you can buy if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, and they're still not that expensive. And so I would say, you certainly get a lot of good potassium from bananas, and people tend to like them. Like they're a good not a gateway drug, they're a gateway fruit for people. Uh-oh, my family has banned me from hiding spinach and things. It turned too many muffins green. Oh, that's a good point. You have to be strategic, I guess. So if it makes something look gross or green, I guess green doesn't have to be gross, then that might not work. Okay. I will tell you with the smoothies, they didn't. Well, we had spinach in a smoothie that had a lot of dark berries in it, like blueberries and blackberries, and it didn't look green at all. So that might be something that you can try as well. I pick up a lot from Trader Joe's. Oh, dehydrated fruits, you do. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea, and they last a super long time as well. Mm-hmm. And they're also a good gateway fruit because they say they're so sweet tasting. Little kids especially love those. Well, not especially, but okay.
4 minutes.
Oh, 4 minutes. Gosh, you guys. Okay. So I'd say after you've done your research and seen what's on special or whatever for the week you're looking at, go ahead and make a general outline of meals for the week so that when you go to the grocery, you're pretty strategic about what you're actually going to buy. That keeps you from that. Tones down the impulse buys that you have and allows you to actually use the food that you do purchase. And that's awesome. And then you make a shopping list so that you're able to really get just what you need. Shopping smart is the second part. So here's some tips for shopping smart. Try not to shop when you're hungry. I don't know about you guys, but when I do that, everything looks delicious and I'm tempted to buy it all. Buy fresh fruits and vegetables in small amounts. You guys mentioned this issue that sometimes things go bad. And so, again, I think you can do this at most stores. You don't need to buy an entire bag of something just because it comes in a bag. I think grapes are a good example of this. You can pull out a bit of the bag of grapes and buy just that portion because it's all sold by weight. Here's something I wanted to show you. It's a USDA has this food waste challenge. And this is a website that I have for you, and they have some great suggestions for what you can do to avoid wasting your food. I like this little poster thing, this food, buy it with thought, cook it with care. That's from the 19-teens, I think, trying to get people to not waste food. Okay, when they are on sale, go ahead and buy the foods that you know you're going to eat in large quantities, especially things if you know they're going to last a while, like bananas, like potatoes and onions, that kind of thing. From a health perspective, well, really in a budgeting perspective as well, you choose veggies and fruit in their simplest form. Sorry, I see I have a typo on here. So you want to buy, for instance, an apple versus applesauce, not all the time, but in general, it's going to be cheaper if it's less processed, and it's going to be better for you if it's less processed. All right, here's another smart shopping challenge for you guys. Just, again, choose from the poll one thing you'd be willing to try in the next week.
We have, about almost 2/3 buy one fruit or vegetable that is new to me.
Great. That's awesome, you guys. Way to go. And some good comments on there, too. I'm sorry I'm running short of time, so I'm going to go ahead and get through the rest of these slides and show you quick, and then I'll stick around on here if you guys want me to answered those questions, but those who need to go can. So this brings us about to the end of the presentation. I did want to show you that I have some links here for some different suggested recipes, and I have them on the handout for you too. This Three Sisters Recipes is a collection of recipes put out by the, oops, won't let me go there for right now, but what is it? Shift, Alt, Tab. And then this delicious lentil recipe, I'm not kidding, it is delicious. I eat it all the time. It's so good. And so my coworker Sarah's here in the room with me, and I brought some for her to try one time, and she's nodding her head, right, Sarah? Yeah, it's my testimony. And then this yummy egg recipe is the one that I said has roasted asparagus and poached egg, and oh man, it looks so good to me. I haven't tried that one yet, but if you do, you should email me and tell me what you think, okay? And I'll try it, I promise. Finally, I just want to say thanks to the University of Maryland Extension, because the inspiration for this presentation I put together came from a curriculum they have called a Healthy Sense curriculum, and I have a link in there if you want to go and check that out a little bit more for yourself. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. I had a really nice time. I enjoyed hearing what you had to say, and I hope you got inspired and learned a thing or two. And the handout that I have available for you includes my email, but looks like John's typing it in there again. Oh, I see. Carla asked that. Yeah.
Okay. With the handout, there should be a handout section on your GoToWebinar control panel, and you can download it from there. And also, I'll try to include a PDF link when we do the post-webinar survey and link to the recording as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I work for University of Minnesota Extension. We have a whole website devoted to healthy eating and active living, and they have great recipes on there and suggestions, and so I included that in the handout too. So thank you so much, everyone, and I really appreciate your attending today, and I hope you all have a great day. And like I said, I'll take a look at some of these other questions and see what I can tell you. Maybe I should type them in, huh? Should I type them as responses or just say?
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll wrap up the recording part of the webinar right now, and just say in closing that, again, if you'd like to check out any of the other webinars, we have 3 coming up in February. And in closing, again, the webinar series is made possible in part by members of our alumni association. So again, thank you. And if you want to help make our global community of alumni stronger, just visit us at umnalumni.org/membership. That concludes the recorded portion of the webinar. I think Sharon said she'll stick online maybe to answer some other questions in the chat box. So I'll just be wrapping up by ending the recording. But then she'll be around for maybe a few more minutes online to take any questions from the chat box. So thanks again to everyone who joined us today, and make it a great day.